I've been working with a couple clients recently, both of whom are writing novels and both of whom are a little newer to the fiction writing game. And one thing that has come up with both their work is the importance of character motivation. That is, when you don't know what your characters want, what their motivation is, it gets hard to write them, and there's a kind of lack of energy in the scene. The characters seem undefined, and there's really no work amount of craft that can overcome this simply not knowing what your characters want. For example, in one of the stories, the client is writing a suspense novel, and the villain, this fellow who's obsessed with this woman, really too obsessed, is the clearest character in the book because what he wants is so absolutely clear. And he is so certain that getting this woman by whatever means and securing her will bring him what he wants, the happiness he wants. And whereas the other character is a little less clear. And what was really good about this particular villain, which is so true of a lot of characters in fiction, it's something that Dennis Lehane talked about, actually, the author of Gone Baby Gone and Mystic River and a bunch of other stuff, in terms of characters and what they want. This character wants this woman because he believes it'll bring him the happiness he wants. It won't. She is not the solution to his problem of feeling loved and feeling feeling successful, feeling valuable, feeling loved, really. Doesn't have to come through her. And in most good fiction, there's what the character thinks they want and what they really need. And usually what they want isn't going to give them what they most desire, which is always happiness, which is always a sense of satisfaction and belonging and value. And so that's a good little um, craft tip for you, you might say. You make sure you understand what your characters want, and if you don't, you probably don't know enough about your characters yet. I certainly went through that with some fiction writing. In fact, I remember writing a novel once, giant fantasy novel. It was one of the last things I wrote, and in the middle of it, these characters were on this giant journey, and the book had gone on for hundreds of pages, but towards about page 500, the characters kept turning to each other and saying, "Why are we on this journey again? Why are we doing this?" And I realized I didn't know, and that was a bad sign. Okay, so that's the stories. Know the motivation. If you don't know it, find it, talk to them, dialogue with them. However it is you learn what your characters want. You got to find out because it drives stories, characters' desires. But now let's talk about our motivation as writers, because this can get complicated. You want to be clear about why you're doing what you're doing, what your actual motivation is. In my experience, it can get pretty confusing pretty fast. When I was a younger writer in my 30s and 40s, and I was working in restaurants, and I really wanted out of the restaurants, and I wrote every day. I wrote 6 days a week. I got up in the morning. I wrote first thing. And my motivation was really, in a way, to save my life, to save my life. That was kind of how I looked at it because I didn't want to be a waiter and I wanted to have some sense of success. I wanted to achieve something. I wanted to feel good about myself. And so I would sit down to write because I like to write, but also because I wanted to have the experience of feeling like I've done it and I'm good enough and I made something of myself and I put my flag in the ground and all that, wanting to feel good about myself and hoping the writing could give that to me, which it couldn't. And so there was all this pressure on what the story would bring me. And while that fear, which is really what it was, did get me to the desk in a way every day, 6 days a week, even though I had kids, some of whom had special needs, and a job and a wife and all that, and a house. Still got me there every day. It was a tough way to write, and it's why I've come to advocate for myself and certainly for my clients and students that the only motivation can really be the experience of writing itself, how it feels to write, the experience of getting lost in the story, the experience of connecting to what you want to connect to in order to write. Because that's your life is about experiences, not what will happen, but what is happening. Not what will happen, but what is happening. Remember, when you're writing a story, a lot of what fiction or memoir, creative nonfiction, storytelling is about is the felt experience of being human. What is it like? What does it feel like to be human as you travel through life? And that feeling is always in the moment. What's happening right now, not what's going to happen. If you are worried about what's going to happen, you're worried now. And the thing you're worried about, of course, is in the future, but the worrying is happening right now in the present moment. That's where life is. And so, no matter how focused you are on the future, and certainly writers, we get focused on the future with whether the book will be published. That's a big one. Will it be successful? That's all out in the future. The truth is, you live in the here and now, and you write in the here and now. And so it changed my relationship to writing when I let the focus be the experience I wanted to have at the page. And for me, it's almost always about discovery and giving up my need to control how the story goes and finding out where it goes and getting in deeply to life through the story. That experience of discovery, that's what I'm always looking for. But that's the experience in writing itself. And the thing about this focus on your work is that if you string together two or 300 good writing experiences in a row, that's how you produce a book that you would share and publish, and then go and have that experience that you think you want that'll make you happy. But it starts with the experience of writing. Let that be the motivation. Let the experience of writing be the motivation because it's actually what drew you to this thing in the first place. Eventually, I'm sure it had to have started there. Maybe eventually it became about what will happen down the road and whether people will like it and how much money you make, but it had to start because you liked doing it. Let that be enough because that's really all you get. At the end of the day, that's what we get. And when we really sink into it and appreciate it and are glad for it and look forward to it, that's how we produce the kind of stuff that, well, we want to share with other people. That's the path to success, and it's instant success. It happens in the moment. You let yourself have that experience for one paragraph, for one sentence, even. Let yourself have that experience, and the rest will follow. Yeah, that's how it works. Yes, it is. So, listen, if you like this, say so, hit like, and if you don't want to miss a little dose of inspiration, subscribe. It's very important. So until next week, this is Bill Kenower. Stay fearless.